Thank you, Eric. Our next speaker is a fifth-generation teacher and now superintendent of Oskaloosa Christian Schools. He previously served as superintendent of Des Moines Christian School. Upon graduation from the Davenport, Iowa West High School class of 1976, he majored in English and played football at Winona State University. He eventually earned a fellowship and his Master of Arts degree in Educational Administration from Northeast Missouri State University in 1987, serving as Associate Principal of Pleasant Valley High School. He earned his doctorate in Educational Administration from the University of Iowa in 1992, serving as Principal of Urbandale High School from 1992 to 2000, and Des Moines Christian School from 2000 to 2014. He's also taught as an adjunct professor of educational leadership for several colleges, including Drake University for 14 consecutive years, and also Cedarville University of Ohio. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Bob Stouffer.
I have seen real speakers, Eric Goranson, and you are a real speaker. That was excellent. I really appreciate it. And I'm proud to be the superintendent of the school from which you graduated, Des Moines Christian School. You heard Brian say that I'm a fifth-generation teacher, so my great-great-grandmother was a teacher, my great-grandparents were, my grandmother was, my mom and dad are, I am, and my daughter, Molly, teaches at a public school in Anchorage. She's the sixth generation. I've seen all sides of education. As you heard, I've been a teacher, an English teacher, an assistant principal, a superintendent. I'm a school board member now. I'm on the board of the Joshua Christian Academy. I helped found that school and continue to help steward that vision forward. You heard that I've been a professor in multiple graduate schools. I have literally hired every single position that you can hire in a school, including as a director on a board, the superintendent of that school. You know that I have public school experience, that I have Christian school experience, and throughout my years I've also had quite a bit of experience interacting with the homeschool community. The title of my message today is, I once was lost, but now I'm found. And this is what I mean by that. As a public school educator, I was steeped in liberal theology. Here are some of those ideas. We should worship education as an idol. Education is the answer to every problem. We should worship the state of Iowa, the Iowa State Education Association, the National Education Association. I believed all of these things. We should train students to be dutiful statists. Grow up and be beholden to the state of Iowa and to our country, because we want to create you in our image of human image. Non-public schools take money away from public schools. That's another thing I believe as a public school educator. That's our money. You shouldn't take our money, I thought, as a teacher, assistant principal, and principal. The solution to every problem is more money. I think Eric rightly alluded to the fact that all the money that's thrown at public schools does not necessarily result in school improvement. In fact, I have a chart, I vaguely remember giving this to Jan Michelson once upon a time when I was on his show, where it shows this direct statistical data that shows that the more money that's thrown at the public schools, the public schools decline in performance. I believed in Dewey, even though I eventually learned that he was a signer of the Communist Manifesto. Maslow, that you can self-actualize, you get to the top of the chain, and wow, you can become who you are. Obviously, I believe much differently now as a Christian. Rogers and his behavioral psychology, Skinner and the whole operant conditioning and positive and negative reinforcement. Not that some of those theories don't have some truth in fact, but I bought into it hook, line, and sinker. The whole MCNS movement, I was all on board that one. Multicultural non-sexism. I supported history books being stripped of reference to our Christian roots. I believed in the Rainbow Coalition and having all kids, whoever they believe themselves to be, we should have tolerance for that. I also believe that religious people are right-wing nuts. I did. I mean, you can laugh at me now, and I believe you should laugh at me now, but that's what I believed. I believed also that educators should educate, the parents should parent, and neither the twain shall meet. In other words, drop your kids off at the front door. You worry about the parenting. We'll worry about the education. You don't know what you're talking about. I'm not going to meddle in your business as a parent. Don't meddle in our business as educators. Also believe that Christmas shouldn't be celebrated or even mentioned or observed in a public school. Youth pastors should not visit schools. School speakers should not talk about Jesus. And then in 1994, I saw the light. I became a believer and a follower of the Lord Jesus Christ. And the scales came off my eyes. That's right. Let's applaud to God. Praise Jesus. The scales came off my eyes like they did for Paul. And I believe that there was a period, it was not 3 days, where I was kind of walking around in a fog. But it was interesting how things changed for me completely. How my worldview just shifted dramatically. I got to see that stewardship's an important thing. Christian schools, non-public schools, scramble for every penny, and they want to give a good return on the investment of donor dollars and of tuition dollars. So I became very careful about the money I spent, as opposed to the way that I spent money in the public schools, which was pretty much pell-mell. I knew that at the end of the fiscal year, the business manager would tell us, if you don't spend that money, you're going to lose it. It's all going to come back to us, and we'll figure out how to spend it. Oh, okay, all right, boom, boom, spend. Maybe not on things that are necessary, but the things that you could buy. Well, when you're in a Christian school like I was in, and still am, you're careful about stewardship. At Des Moines Christian, we built a building of 150,000 square feet for $8.35 million, which sounds like a lot. But if you think about it, 6 blocks to the north, there's a public school that had half the square footage for twice the cost. 75,000 square feet, $16 million. They have terrazzo floors, they have black walls everywhere, they have the most beautiful things that money can buy and your tax money dollars are paying for. But I would contend that it's not the best stewardship. I would contend that our school did a much, much better job in that arena. My worldview changed, so I couldn't get enough youth pastors in the building. At Urban Hill High School as the principal. I became a believer in Christ my second year there. And wow, hey, who else wants to come in? I mean, lunchtime, everybody, you bring them all in. Yeah, you can't proselytize, but I want your influence on kids who desperately need to know about Jesus Christ and the way that you can legally do that. And without proselytizing, I was then also supportive of Christian speakers coming in and telling about their faith in Jesus Christ. And I was very supportive of Christian teachers who wanted to speak their mind about their Christianity in a way that, again, wasn't proselytizing, but that they were allowed to talk about Jesus. And I was selected for an MCS award by the guy who I think even today is Obama's Rainbow Coalition guy. I don't know what the czar of whatever that's called, diversity. And I said, that's really nice, but I can't come on the platform and support an organization. I'm glad that you think that I'm so supportive of diversity, but I'll decline the award respectfully and give it to somebody else. I have a much different worldview. I now thirst for a biblical worldview. I think much differently about education. I think and I believe with all my heart that all Iowa school children have value, no matter the parents' choices. And that's the rub with me when I'm talking to people in public schools where they get so anti-non-public schools or anti-homeschooling. They don't really understand that it's really not so much against public schooling as much as it's for, I want a Christ, I want Bible in the curriculum. Or as a parent, I want to choose to homeschool my child, and I think it's relevant for the school to support me financially, because what's good for Iowa school children is good for the state. I also believe that education is the responsibility of the parent. I also believe that the spiritual formation of children is the primary responsibility of the parent. That schools should partner with, if it's a day school, should partner with parents rather than absorb or let them advocate to me as an educator what their responsibility is. Parents are the primary teachers. We are partnering with parents. In the body of conservatives, we should not look down on parents for their choices. That's been a recent revelation for me. There's a lot of conflict that exists between people. You think about it. Think in your sphere of influence. There are parents who have chosen homeschooling. There are parents who have chosen Christian schools. There are parents, the vast majority, who choose public schools. We lose a lot of energy by getting upset at each other when we should, as I'm guessing that most of the people, conservatives here, or maybe Christians, born-again believers like me, we should be banding together and really encouraging parents to take their rightful responsibility for education and the spiritual formation of their kids. There's too many parents that are abdicating those two responsibilities and they're asleep at the switch. Here's another thing I believe with all my heart. Education should not be the choice of the student. I'm amazed by the number of parents who I interact with who say, well, maybe Oskaloosa Christian this year, but I'm going to let them choose next year, Oskaloosa High School or Bella Christian High School. Really? You're going to give your child the choice of one of the most important responsibilities you have biblically, if you're a believer, or that you have as a non-believer, for your children to have a high-quality education? I can't believe that. Mark Holman, a pastor, who actually pastors the church where George Barna, the famed Christian demographer and researcher, wrote a book. Pastor Holman wrote this book called Church Plus Home. And the basic essence of that book is that parents should understand that kids are in church maybe 4 or 5 hours a week, and they're at home awake about 50 hours a week. So do the math. Parents, step into your role as educators and as formers of your children's spiritual health. Disciple your kids. Don't think that the church is going to do that for you, especially when there's so few hours that are available for the church to do that. It's your responsibility, parents, not the church's. Well, I think he missed the mark on that. In fact, I sent an email to him on his website. I haven't heard back from him yet. If I don't hear back from him soon, I'm still going to write this book. It's going to be called Church Plus Home Plus School. Kids are in school 35, 40 hours a week during the school year. That's a lot of hours compared to the church, and it certainly stacks up pretty carefully, pretty closely to the hours that you're at home and awake, if you're even interacting with your parents. I'm sure a number of scenarios might be popping into your head right now that the parents and the students aren't even in close proximity to each other, having interaction, or the parents would be discipling their children. If you're going to choose homeschooling for kids, I think that's the greatest privilege that any parent can be called to. I support that 100%. In fact, ironically, I have actually, with parents who have been on the bubble as to whether they choose homeschooling or Christian school, I've said, if you're on the bubble, homeschool your kid, try it out at least for a period of time. The door's always open, we'll leave the light on for you. Go for it. I mean, that's a privilege to go one-on-one to disciple your kids. If you're going to choose public school, then you better be very careful in how you do that, and you better be very involved. Because there's a lot of things that are happening in public schools. The varying worldviews that are competing against your children's, hopefully biblical worldview, are ones that you need to be very, very aware of. And you need to be asking a lot of questions. You need to be up at that school a lot. You need to be on the parent advisory committee, or the PTO, or the PTA. And you need to ask hard questions when you hear something wacky that doesn't seem quite right according to your worldview and the worldview you're trying to teach your kid. So when they come home, you know what's going on. I am not going to judge you if you choose public schools, and none of us should. But I will be frustrated with you if you just say public school and I'm going to do nothing other than put them in the public school. And the classic argument, even though it's never said out loud, is it's free. Is it really worth that, though, in the long run? You're making an investment for eternity if you invest in a non-public school, and you also, at the same time, stay involved, because you can't believe that any Christian school necessarily would be doing right by you. It's the parent's responsibility to be involved. Stay in the game. Hard. I also believe that schools are economic drivers. Now, let the scales come off my eyes. Schools are important to communities. I want the public schools to succeed. A lot of people think, non-public schools are all waiting for the public schools to fail. Really? I want an institution that takes about 85% of the kids in the state to fail? No, the quality of my life, the resale value of my home is directly proportional as to whether the Urbandale schools have good schools and they have a positive reputation. I don't want them to fail. In fact, I want them to succeed, because that's going to drive me even more as a non-public school person to make sure that our education is that much better. It's competition. Not in a negative sense. I don't think all the public schools generally look at it as a negative sense. I think it's just positive for the very points that Eric was making about school choice. You will never, ever hear me speak poorly of public schools. I'm proud of what I accomplished as a public school student, as a teacher, as an administrator. I spent 20 years in the public schools. We did some really good things. We did some bad things, though, too. And I'm aware of that now that my worldview is different. I want them to grow, and I want them to get better. And I will always nurture a good relationship with the public school where I'm working. In Oskaloosa, one of the first people I went and met was Russ Ryder, the superintendent of the Oskaloosa Public Schools. Russ, I'm here. I just want you to let you know, I want to introduce myself. I want your schools to succeed. I want you to do well. If there's anything I can ever do, I'm going to be praying for you. I'm going to pray for you to have great schools in Oskaloosa, because the quality of life in Oskaloosa, as I said before, is directly proportional to how good the schools are in the public schools and in my school as well. I want the free enterprise system to work. Educational choice is a good thing. The STO is one of the best things to ever happen in non-public education. HSAs would transform education in Iowa, I believe. I can't believe how close we are. I think Eric would agree, and I don't know if he said this as strongly as he could have, although he would agree with me now, that it's amazing how far it's come in just such a short period of time. And that we're on the cusp of this happening. And if it does happen, and people can actually choose the education for their children, watch out. Can't you bar the door? There's some crazy stuff that's going to happen in Iowa. Government intrusion is a bad thing. I used to believe that government, great, awesome. More government, bigger government. More involved government. No, less government intrusion. Common Core to indoctrinate or dumb down is wrong. I think Shane's going to talk a little bit about Common Core. I'm not in favor of something that's indoctrinating kids or dumbs down education. But I do agree in high standards. I don't believe the Iowa core standards are high enough. I remember I got myself in trouble with the Iowa Department of Education when I went to Des Moines Christian right away. You had to say what the competency, what the level is for proficiency. And in the state, it's the 41st percentile nationally. And so I wrote in on the form that we wanted it at Des Moines Christian to be the 50th percentile nationally. And I got a call back on one of those rare occasions, I think, where somebody at the state actually reads the report and looked at the numbers. She says, you can't do that. I go, what do you mean? We want to have higher standards than the 41st percentile nationally. You can't do that. What? We've adopted the 41st percentile nationally. You just have to fill in the blank. The 41st percentile nationally. No, we have to have higher standards not only in public schools, but in non-public schools as well. You know, and I have one last comment. This is kind of a little advertisement. I'm a kingdom worker. That's why I drive to Oskaloosa Christian School. Not every day. I actually stay in the board president's parents' basement. They're in their 80s, and it's a great deal. They're wonderful people. On Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursday nights. And I come back for church activities on Wednesdays, and I come back for the weekend. I'm a kingdom worker. I want to do that because God has led me to do that. I want to go wherever He wants me to go. Some of you might think, Oskaloosa? Really? Yeah, Oskaloosa. God called me there, and kids down there need a good education. Right? But I have a dream to blow up the educational system the way it looks. Eric and I should probably form a little pack here together and remake the factory model. I've always been too radical for all the schools I've ever been at because we're just not meeting the mark the way we should, especially in high schools. I'm a high school guy primarily. But we need to change that. And I have a dream for a Christ-centered community college in the greater Des Moines area. And I'm meeting with a guy today in the Smoky Row for one of my nth number of meetings with him because he's had to trot on this thing and he believes that we can make it happen. And I've had this vision for 15 years. God birthed it in my heart and I want to see it happen. I want to be able to compete against, even though there's no way you can compete against DMAC, but for Christian families who desire Christ-centered, biblically directed coursework at the general ed level for a first year or a second year college student, let's price the thing exactly the same and give people Christ-centeredness. Let's give you kids another year or two to grow up. We throw kids into where I went to when I got my doctorate at the University of Iowa, which I like to affectionately call the University of Sodom and Gomorrah. We throw kids over there and we say, oh, here's all this freedom now. I'm not checking on the portal at the website every single day, whether you're there or you're getting all your assignments. Go for it. And even Christian kids wash out because they're not mature enough to deal with it. What if we have a disciple-making community college, complete with a student union, where all the professors are dedicated and committed to discipling their students, where we come together, it's the Jesus model, and we're educating and we're forming spiritually. It's a great model, I think. It's very creative. I've heard there's only one school like this in California, which amazes me, and it's actually a Christ-centered place. So, that's my story. I'm sticking to it. I'll be up here with the other austere members of the panel, but come at me when you have questions here at the end. Thank you very much.